Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be continuing in our 3-star Rift Clear series. We have finished the Gamma Rifts, and so today we will move on to the second set, which is the Psi Rifts. Specifically, we will be looking to clear these 5 rifts. The names will be gone over individually. They are also listed in the description down below. So before we jump into everything, make sure you're subscribed, drop a like on the video at the end if you enjoy, feel free to leave a comment, and without further ado, let's jump into these clears. Now, the first of the 5 rifts that we will be having a look at is a countdown style rift. And I tend to have a lot of fun with these ones in particular because there's an extra added challenge to them. Now, this one, the 3 criteria that you need to keep in mind to get your 3-star clears, of course, get the clear right off the bat. The second criteria is take less than 20,000 damage, which sounds like a lot, but honestly, as long as you aren't taking really big hits from any of the larger bosses, you're going to meet this criteria very easily. The third and final, which is probably the more challenging to accomplish, is ending this trial with more than a minute remaining on the timer, which, yes, you do start the quest with only having 30 seconds available, but you earn time back based off of defeating your enemies, and the stronger the enemy is, you can burst down, and the quicker you can burst them down, the quicker you will be able to gain time back. And it only took me one try to get this when I went back through with the intention of getting that 3-star clear. So as you'll see, we do have the standard team setup that we've had for these other Rift clears because Miles Morales and Gambit do a very good job at covering wide areas of effect. Thanos has a very efficient bursting damage, especially because you unlock him at such a high level. And Wolverine also is pretty efficient at burning down some of the larger characters. Even when you're not taking full control of him, he manages that pretty well. So here, with Miles, my overall strategy is just laying down as many of these electro eggs as I possibly can. And you see that I'm making stupid mistakes. I'm getting hit by some of these enemies, even though their attacks are pretty well avoidable. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because we're not going to have to worry too much about meeting that damage threshold. And most of these grunts go down pretty easy. Now, the biggest challenge that we're going to find is this just does happen to be the section of the fight where we need to navigate this maze. And this maze, out of the 2 that you encounter through the main story quest, is more tedious because there are 2 different paths that you need to take in order to clear it out. And though it is the same path every time, I frequently get confused and turned around. But ultimately, the clear that you want to do is by going over here to the right-hand side first, and then kind of follow. I'm going the wrong way here, but you'll want to kind of follow up closer to that right-hand side, which will basically lead you straight to the terminal on your right. And after you get that terminal cleared out, you can then back out all the way to the start and then come back around to the main terminal. Now, I didn't need to take some time to knock this guy down, but and typically my strategy is to just activate these terminals as quickly as possible. But as I was trying to conserve some damage, it was helpful to just go ahead and lay down that electro web to sustain some damage here against these NPCs that do regenerate periodically throughout the fight after they've been down for a certain period of time. The maze is a little more easy to navigate after you have cleared out the first of these 2 terminals, but as soon as you get through to the other one, I get lost a little bit here. We actually need to go all the way back to the start and follow almost exclusively up that left-hand side. But I'm getting a little flustered because I think that I'm maybe running out of time, and in reality, I'm finding my way to the end of this with a little bit of time lost, but there will be more opportunity to gain time back from the different enemies that we will come encounter once we get through this section. As you see there, we actually gained 13 seconds back, and there are a bunch of enemies that spawned in afterwards that we can take out pretty quickly using more applications of Miles' electro webs, and Thanos and Wolverine do a very good job at bursting down the remainder of these large opponents, and they're not taking any damage that you really need to worry about. 20 more seconds on the clock there, and we're coming into what's not quite the home stretch. There's a little bit of the cargo holding area we need to clear out. This does give us some more characters that we can burst down to put time back on the clock. There's one final terminal that we'll need to clear out, which is just around the corner here. With Miles, I lay down a little more cover with my Electro webs, burst down a few more of these characters because I do need to ramp up my time to give myself a healthy little cushion, especially as we're coming into the final and boss stage of the fight. At this point, there's nothing that's going to keep me from activating this terminal, so we'll go ahead and get it switched on. We should gain some time back, which we do, another 13 seconds. That leaves us 50 seconds before the final culminating fight, which Miles will get us to a little quicker due to his web-slinging double jump mechanic. Now, the one big difference you do want to keep in mind here is this, though Ultron is normally the fight that you interact with, here it is actually changed out for Dr. Octopus, who I think is a little bit easier to take on. And there are grunts that continuously spawn into this fight, so you will have ample opportunity to gain time back in this fight. With Thanos, I'm really just focusing at this point on getting these cosmic might punches, because they do a very substantial amount of damage to Dr. Octopus, and we just about got him burned down. We get some more grunts that we can wipe out really quick. That will allow us to get up over that 1 minute threshold, and here with Miles, we punch through Dr. Octopus, get a 48-second addition to the clock, which bumps us up to the 123 mark and allows us the 3-star clear. Now, the second rift that we'll be having a look at today is also a level 25 rift. This one is the wave style, which is similar to the one that we saw and then practiced our characters on. The difference here is this is at the Xavier Institute. And this is the one that I had to run multiple different times, and I actually had to switch up my team a little bit in order to get this clear based off of the nature of the fight. So for this, you do need to clear it out to get the first initial clear. The second is defeating 20 powerful enemies, which is honestly a cakewalk. You don't need to worry about getting those 20 enemies because they basically hand them to you on a silver platter as soon as you enter the fight, essentially. But the third one is the trickiest of the criteria, and that is clearing this in under 3 minutes or less. So the team adjustment that I had to make was actually one that I didn't expect. So let's have a look at the team that I brought into this fight that got me the 3-minute clear. So the 3-minute clear team dynamic switch I had to make looks the same at its first glance, but you'll notice that I have Cable along instead of Thanos. And the main reason that I had him along was for this very reason. His gravity bomb sucks enemies in and allows you to burst them down a lot more efficiently because it condenses them to a very finite area. Now, I am focusing on using as much of this Electro Web attack as I can. We're also using some of his Venom Shock Dive, and Cable continues to pull more characters in with his Gravity Bomb, which is very, very helpful in terms of burning these characters down. Sentinels will pop up periodically throughout the fight. This first one, though he does show up fairly early, and when you defeat him, he drops his core, just like any other Sentinel does. You actually can't, at least from my experience, get another Sentinel to show up before this core auto-detonates. So what I do end up doing here is just kind of picking it up and using it because you might as well use it before you lose it type of thing. There are some energy canisters with the flame attribute that pop up as well that you can use to your advantage, and they will continue to populate as you have more enemies spawn in, so you don't really need to worry about that. As you'll see right here, the energy core from that Sentinel auto-detonated before another Sentinel showed up, though we should see one here in about, yeah, right there is when the next one shows up. You will have enough time with these different characters in this fight to get 2 extreme attacks off. I like to pop them as quickly as I get them to get as massive amount of damage out as I can. With Cable, I did make a little bit of a mistake, and I had him angled the wrong way, so his damage wasn't as effective. But at the end of the day, we did get substantial damage with the other 3, so I wasn't as concerned. I'm employing my Adamantium Uppercut and Falling Aerial Attack with Wolverine because it is massive damage output, and as you saw there, with 4 or 5 applications of it, we had that Sentinel completely burned out. Now, we still have this Energy Core, which we can use against this Sentinel, which is a very, very good weakness exploit against them, and it took them out very efficiently. That should be the last of the Sentinels that show up, at least from the ones that you need to be concerned about getting rid of. And with Wolverine, I'm just focusing on throwing as many of these canisters around. We get another round of these expert attacks off, and Cable, I made the same mistake again because I'm not as familiar with his directional influence. But we're coming up to the end. We've only got 15 more enemies that we need to burn down, and Cable, having lulled the enemies together efficiently, made this a lot easier than the other attempts that I made with even with Thanos on the team, and we do manage to clear in under 3 minutes to get that final star. The third rift that we'll look at today is another level 25 rift. This is the rush style, which is another one that I tend to have a lot of fun with. I did have to go through this one a few times to get it cleared out in the terms that I was looking for, but once you have a high DPS team and an efficient strategy, you can burn through all three criteria pretty simply. This one, the quirk is as time progresses, your enemies will deal more damage, as will you deal more damage to your enemies. And it's pretty fun in terms of being able to deal more damage than you otherwise would as the fight progresses. Especially because Miles' Elektra web does have a bit of a stagger effect to it, where a lot of the smaller grunts really can't do anything as soon as they get stuck in that field. The one thing you do want to keep in mind is the second attribute of this fight, where you want to clear it out with 3.5 million damage or more using abilities, but as long as you're targeting synergized attacks on your team, you're going to hit that threshold without any problems. The bigger struggle is defeating double the minimum requirement, defeating 80 enemies instead of the 40 to get the third star clear, but we're going to go ahead and showcase how I managed to do that with my current team setup. So we have switched back to the higher DPS Thanos over Cable, just because he is very self-sufficient and synergizes very well with Miles's Venom or Electro Web synergy attack here. Now, we do have another Miles running around, and he is one of the mini bosses that pop up, but he actually just gives you more of an opportunity to get your synergy damage out more than anything else. Though, in my case, it was a little confusing for me where I have two of them, but the biggest way to tell the difference between your Miles and the NPC Miles is Miles' Electro Web goes in a straight line out in front of him, in comparison to where yours spreads out in a more collective area. We have more of these bigger, heavier enemies popping up, but we've dealt enough damage at this point, despite only having 7 enemies defeated, to go ahead and burst out all of these opponents with a round of extreme attacks from each of our characters, and we will continue to gain those back at an accelerated rate over the course of this fight. Now, Gambit, I'm trying to get as many of these danger zone floor traps set up. I misclicked there into the Deadly Deal, but the Deadly Deal is actually kind of nice at chipping away at the stagger bars. Though it's not his most efficient tool, it's certainly a very quick one and is relatively safe on your MP gauge, especially where you have as many enemies dropping full MP replacements in this fight in comparison to others throughout a regular story quest or even other styled rifts. Now, I have switched back over to Miles because I do want to continue laying down these Electro Webs, and at this point we're a little over halfway in and we're at the minimum requirement of the 40 attacks, or the 40 opponents burnt down. And with these extreme attacks, we've already racked up a whole another 10, and we'll actually get another opportunity before this rift is over to use each of these characters' extreme attacks one more time, just with how quickly they are charging due to the damage output that we're dealing, which is one of the benefits of dealing accelerated damage on your attacks. We're up to 60 enemies now, and with Gambit, I am trying to get more of these danger fields and his staff attack in there. We've got about 70 enemies down, about 30 seconds left, and that Venom Blast from Miles burned down about 4 or 5 of those heavier opponents. And with one more application of all of the ultimate attacks from the team here, we easily surpass that 80 threshold. We even get up into almost the 100 range by the time we're finished with this rift. So as long as you rely on your team attacks and cycle through the different characters on your team, you can very easily get through this quest and get that 3-star clear by knocking out 80 enemies in that 3-minute limit. The fourth rift that we'll be having a look at today is the level 26 Boost Rift, where the main goal is to defeat Elektra. This rift has a similar mechanic to the previous rift, where both enemies and allies will deal increased damage, but the big difference here is it's not increasing over time, it's just right off the bat. There's more damage being dealt all around. Now, the first two criteria here of getting the trial cleared and defeating 45 enemies is relatively straightforward. You should realistically be able to knock all of these out in one single run as long as you're playing smart. For interest of time, I will be showcasing more towards that third criteria of something that you can do to help get one or fewer teammate incapacitations in the course of clearing this out, just due to the nature of how that quest is laid out. So let's jump in and have a look at what that adjustment would be. So as you can see here, this starts us off right at the entrance of the Hand Temple. We don't have to waste any time with that puzzle, which is pretty nice. But ultimately, because you can really get the 25 or the 45 characters cleared out anytime, the best thing to do is just blitz through it. Just kind of run through the characters that you'll be dealing with and get straight to the main event. Now, here with Gambit, he's not the most optimal in terms of getting through these areas, but at the end of the day, I can get through these traps pretty efficiently. They're not overly difficult, and they're outlined exactly where they are, so you can navigate your way around them even if you don't have a character that floats or web slings or does something else to get around it. Now, this is the last section of the floor traps in just the standard walkthrough puzzle, but you do need to keep in mind that this next room has floor traps, and it is obligatory to clear out before you can progress to the main story objective of knocking out Elektra. But at the end of the day, it's going to be pretty easy to knock these characters out. I focus on setting up some dangerous terrain with Gambit, just because it'll help keep enemies out of the middle. But the bigger thing that's a little bit frustrating for you is these characters on the outside and interlaid between these floor traps. Though they do have capacity to deal melee attacks, if there's nobody near you, they will either fling shurikens or explosives from the sidelines. So if you can focus them down around the outside, that's one less thing for you to have to worry about. Of course, the larger enemies with their health pools can be frustrating as well, but as you saw with that aerial attack there from Gambit, we burst down the last little bit that was needed from that character. Progressing right on through, we do end up in the main fight with Elektra, and this is a little less intense than the main story, mainly because you're seeing that there are a lot less of these priests that are safeguarding her that you need to take out, which is certainly nice, just due to the level of difficulty increasing over the course of these rifts that we're attempting to go through. Now, Gambit has his staff attack, which is very efficient at knocking out characters with large stagger bars, as well as throwing down those cards and then detonating them with an energy blast. It deals a pretty vast area of attack damage as on top of what you're already doing with just your standard attacks. Now, we just about have the main priests down. There's one more over here that we need to burst down, and as soon as we get him taken care of, Elektra is going to be open and allow us to take her out. Now, the mildly frustrating part about this is we just about had her stagger down bar all the way down, but it resets as a part of her fight here. And in the end, it really doesn't matter. We've just about got all of our characters with their extreme abilities up, and one or two more passes of her stagger bar will have those online, and that will really help for smoothing out the rest of the fight. Miles does get some of his electro webs set up here in the middle of this fight, which is beneficial. And right there, we actually were able to clear out Elektra before the extreme attacks were needed, and that takes care of your third criteria. The fifth and final quest that we'll be having a look at today is the level 26 Extreme Trial, where the goal is to defeat Loki. All in all, this quest isn't super difficult, but it is a little technical on one of the clear conditions, which is the version which we will be showing you today. Now the two that are the stars out of this quest that are easiest to get are actually not the ones that you'd initially expect. It's actually getting the trial clear and finishing in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The reason why getting the 2-minute 30-second clear is so easy is due to the quirk of this battle, where extreme attacks charge more quickly and deal more damage when used. So really what the challenge becomes here in this fight is defeating 8 enemies, because it's not standard like the rest of the fights that we've experienced with just hordes of enemies and grunts that come in. Loki spawns shadow clones periodically throughout the fight, but he will not start to spawn them until you get him into the last half of his health bar. So ultimately what you need to do is you need to focus him down to that half as quickly as you can, and then bite out a couple spawns of his shadow clones until you have 8 of them showing up. So let's go ahead and have a look at that clear so you can kind of get a better feel for what that timing needs to be. So right off the bat here, we want to run up to Loki and get as quick and clean of a start on bursting down his shield as possible. Now, ideally, you're really not going to do a whole lot of damage to him until you get your extreme gauges up. And at this point, it was probably a little premature to pop all of them at the same time. But again, the main goal we're going for here is not the 2-minute and 30-second clear, but rather defeating the 8 enemies to get the full benefit of that clear. Now, Loki has some pretty tricky moves, but all in all, he's not a massive damage dealer. And just like that, with the one use of our extreme attacks, we do have him down to the second stage of the fight, which is where you see the shadow clones coming into effect. Now, the shadow clones spawn at full health and at full shields. Their shields are not nearly as potent as the main Loki, and the best strategy that I've generally found for dealing with the shadow clones is bursting down their shield while you have your extreme attack online, and then unloading the extreme attack directly on to the character that you're trying to take out at that given time. And you can see just how quickly the accelerated gain of the extreme gauge is in this fight. I mean, we've got Thanos over here in the corner just kind of laying into Loki, and just like that, the entire team has the extreme gauge on hand. Now, I could have very easily finished out this quest if I would have unleashed the extreme gauge there on that staggered Loki, but we don't have the full 8 characters yet. As a matter of fact, even this wave would only get us about 7 characters, so we need to wait for even the next one before they come around. So there you see the strategy of defeating or taking out the stagger bar from Loki, and then using Thanos' extreme attack. We do the same thing with Gambit, and then switch off to a different character to focus down a different shadow clone. This one from Miles wasn't as efficient as I would have hoped that it would have been, but we had some additional help coming through to finally get the rest of that down and make sure he didn't run away from us too quickly. Now, at this point, we're really just trying to wait for one more round of the shadow clones to show up. And here we've got one, so let's go ahead and lay into him with Thanos and get the ultimate attack laid down here. And that easily takes out what really should be the last of the clones. I think I get a little carried away and go after 1 or 2 more. But that was more of a tactical error, because Loki, where he kind of teleports and shifts around, is quite the tricky character. As you saw, I used Gambit's ultimate attack there and really didn't do much off of Loki's overall health pool. The one from Miles and Wolverine did a decent amount, but it's still a fair minute away from having it fully burned down. At the end of the day, this part isn't as stressful, and we're not on that time constraint in this particular run, as you don't need to get all of the criteria in the same run in order to get the full clear and get the 3-star rating on it. Now, if Loki hadn't moved away, or if I had been focusing down the correct Loki, we would have cleared that out just there with the use of those extreme attacks, but alas, that was not the case. So with Gambit, we're using the Deadly Deal to try and chip down at Loki's health bar, or his stagger bar there, as well as building up Gambit's extreme gauge. And with the last use of Gambit's extreme gauge here, we'll be able to burn down what's remaining of Loki's health, and that will efficiently give us the 3-star clear. Alright, so just like that, we have the first 5 quests in the Psi Rift cleared out. As you can see, we've got a couple more of them to go. This one doesn't have as many character-specific rifts as some of the others that we've taken on, but we will continue to go through all of them and walk you through the 3-star clear conditions as we go through and getting those clears as well. Again, if you're enjoying this series, don't forget to drop a like on the video. Let me know what fights you're interested in the comments down below. If there's other characters that you think that I should use in these quests or that would do better in terms of damage dealing, I'm open to those suggestions and showing you more of what you're looking for as well. Until then, thanks again for watching, and you have yourself a fantastic rest of your day.